The nation's longest-running traveling celebration of traditional arts, the National Folk Festival comes to downtown Jackson for the first time, November 7th through the 9th. A fun-filled weekend for the entire family, exploring roots, richness, and variety of American culture. Non-stop music and dance, folk life demonstrations, hands-on children's activities, signature Southern foods, crafts, and more showcasing the best of America, the best of Mississippi, all free. We'll see you in November. More at nationalfolkfestival.com.
Everlasting, the Legacy Podcast, is the official companion podcast to the upcoming MPB original documentary, focusing on the life of Medgar Evers. The companion podcast, hosted by me, Rita Brent, will feature in-depth conversations, extended interviews, and exclusive archive footage not shown in the documentary. Everlasting, the Legacy Podcast, video and audio episodes premiere September 18th. Find it on mpbonline.org or wherever you get your podcasts. MPB, your stories, our mission.
What's happening in Mississippi on this Wednesday, September 10th? The year is marching right along. I hope you all are having a good early false fall. Germaine in the booth, as
Russ,
always.
What's going on?
Looking lovely today.
Don't call it a false fall. It's a real one, I promise. No, I don't know.
You know how this works. We're going to have a few nice days. It's sunny, but not too hot. There's a little breeze. You can feel the crisp in the air in the morning. And then we'll go back to 100 degrees. And, we'll have a Halloween where it's 95.
So a little birdie told me, though, everybody's been trying to forecast this Saturday's weather because it's Book Festival.
It is
Saturday.
Book Festival.
They say it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah. Well, look, it has been absolutely gorgeous.
Who they are, we don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, they. And it's really easy for they to deny it afterwards, right? It wasn't us.
It wasn't me.
It wasn't us. No, I mean, it's just been glorious. My son, who's only 12, the other day walked outside, came back in and said, "It's just glorious outside today, Father."
That's good words for a 12-year-old.
What in the world are you?
That's good words for a 12-year-old.
Yeah. And he's talking about how much he loves it. I love fall, too. There's something about it. I mean, the return of football.
That's it.
Amazing.
Yeah, everybody's into it. Buffalo Bills just won. So we're
Are you
good.
a Bills fan?
Yes, my folks are from Buffalo, Mississippi. Buffalo, Mississippi. Might as well
I was about
meld
to
the
say,
two.
that's a place that I've never heard of
Buffalo,
before.
New York. My mom's people are from Buffalo, New York, and the day was September the 7th when they played. It was actually my late grandmother's birthday, who was a avid Buffalo Bills fan, and they won on her birthday this year.
There you go. There you go. So, college football's back. You got both Mississippi State and Ole Miss performing well so far, 2-0. That's exciting.
Yeah.
I was trying to convince my son that there are actually better places than Mississippi to see the fall, though.
Okay. Yeah. Up north, they have real foliage.
They have foliage. And when I turned 30, I turned 80, and my wife and I started going to New Hampshire and Vermont occasionally to see the leaves.
Yeah.
Which really makes you an old person. It's like,
that's
we're going leafing, and we're going to drink some apple cider.
And feel warm and cozy on the inside.
And act as if we live in Norman Rockwell era, right? Woodstock, if you've never been and you're listening, Woodstock, Vermont is the place to go.
Okay.
It's awesome.
Okay.
But another marker of fall in Mississippi is the Mississippi Book Festival, which is coming up this Saturday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And to tell us all about it, we are joined by the executive director of the Mississippi Book Festival, Ellen Daniels. Ellen, good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me, Russ.
I know this is the most wonderful time of the year for me. Is it the most wonderful time of the year for you as you get ready for this colossal event, or what has become a colossal event with the Literary Lawn Party?
I mean, yes and no. Of course, all of us with the book festival, we love working to plan this event all year long. Now, I will say, gets a little bit more high stakes the week of the book festival. And, we're like actually physically building the set and, doing all the fine finishing touches. But on that day of the book festival and seeing all of the people walk around smiling, having a great time, and, enjoying all the things that we've planned all year long, it is truly incredible.
Yeah. I've been several times. I'm always amazed at just the volume of people
Yeah.
I mean, because I think you guys have drawn, this is your 11th year, right?
Correct.
Well over 50-something thousand people.
Oh, I mean, in total?
Yeah.
Oh, we've reached like 700 and something thousand.
So you're doing that 50+ thousand every year, basically.
Well, so last year in total we reached over 37,000 people, and now that is not just day of attendees. That's all the students around the state that we reach with our kids programming, all of the events around the festival leading up to the day, and yeah. So I mean, but cumulatively, I mean, we have reached a lot, and yet with our podcast, which MPB produces, our we film all of the panels on the day of the event, and then they live on our website in perpetuity, all of those views. So, yeah, I mean, it reaches a pretty high number.
Yeah, and really just even beyond sort of the internet reach, if you've never been, one, go, because it's awesome. Two, you'll just see such a great variety of people from all walks of life, all stripes, all political persuasions, whatever it is. It's an event that draws people together. The other thing is just the incredible variety of actual talent represented in those tents and on those panels. There is something for everyone in terms of what you like to read.
Exactly, and that is also one of my favorite parts. 2022 was the first book festival we came back in person, and we had been through a lot as a country and as the world at that point. And I just remember like several times during the day as I was, cutting a track in between Galloway United Methodist Church and the State Capitol building, I would just stop right in the middle of the site and just take it in to see so many different kinds of people coming together over a shared love of reading and books. And it was such a breath of fresh air. And it was like, okay, we're going to be okay. And then, as you said, the breadth of subject matter on display and authors who covers that subject matter. I mean, it is wide. As you said, there is literally something for every type of reader at the book festival.
And that's true on the panels as well. I was going through the schedule this morning, and obviously my personal interest leans political. So I saw that you've got a great political panel put together. David Drucker's moderating that. Mm-hmm. I think Jonathan Allen's on that. Selena Zito's on that panel. These are big names in the political writing space. And candidly, they're all over the place on television too, right? Both Selena and Jonathan are regularly on TV talking politics. And so that's a big get. But you've got people like Wright Thompson, John T. Edge on the cultural side, lots of good stuff. Kind of give us the high water marker or what you think people will be interested in.
I always try to gauge what I think is going to be like the most populated panel. But then on the day of, you just kind of it's just it's see and find out. But just kick off the day in Galloway Sanctuary, we have Peter Brown, who is a children's literature author. And Peter Brown created the middle grade series called The Wild Robot, which became a national phenomenon. And then last year, the movie was released, and it is absolutely incredible. And if there are any mothers listening to this today, that movie and those books, it is about motherhood. I ugly cried when I watched it with my 5-year-old. She was looking at me like, what in the world is going on? It's so touching. And so many adults and children are going to want to see Peter Brown's session. But then we have, next up, Wright Thompson talking about The Barn. And he's going to be in conversation with LeJeune Montgomery Tabron, who is the president and CEO of the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, which is a tremendous national foundation doing great work all over the country. And then we have The Bomb. If you've seen the schedule, the panel is simply called The Bomb. And last year we had a great author named Garrett Graff come with an oral history of D-Day, and he was in the old Supreme Court room. And every person that left that session said it was the best session they had ever been to at the book festival. Well, after the book festival was over, Garrett, who is a lovely guy, he emailed and he said, saying he had what a great time he had. And he was like, and I have another book coming out next year, and it is an oral history of the creation and, of course, the unleashing of the atomic bomb, and which I have a serious interest in. And I was like, well, Garrett, we will be so excited to see you next year. So, but we thought it would be great if he was in conversation with Kai Bird, who wrote American Prometheus, which the Oppenheimer was the movie Oppenheimer was based off of. And then we've got Kiese Lehman and Jason Reynolds in conversation with Tracy Thomas, Tracy runs a tremendous book podcast called The Stacks. We've got Geraldine Brooks, a Pulitzer Prize winning author. We have if you are a history buff, just go sit in the old Supreme Court room on the second floor of the State Capitol building on Book Festival Day and just take in the feast. I mean, we've got Civil War and Reconstruction, African American history, First Americans. I'm forgetting something super critical. If you're really into topical issues on Iran, we've got Iran Unveiled with Scott Anderson, who wrote an incredible book a few years ago, Lawrence of Arabia. So, I mean, there's just something fiction, if fiction is your thing, we've got incredible fiction panels, children's panels, culture panels, of who, of course, Germaine is going to be moderating.
I'm
one
excited
of those.
about that. I was excited last year to do it last year. I'm even more excited this year. And it's the Spirit of the South panel. I'm going to get it right.
You got it, Germaine.
But I do know my books.
Of course you do.
Unpalatable, Carrie Helms, Hometown, Mississippi, Melody Golding, and Jolie and Kamel King with Jacktown, USA.
There you go.
And I think I need to mention there are going to be 2 Jacktown USA panels on the day of the festival. Okay. So if you are super into the music scene in Jackson and think that, the music scene in Jackson is pretty incomparable, please go to those 2 panels. I mean, they'll have the musical artist on them. It's going to be absolutely fantastic.
And then you've got some sports panels. I saw Rick Cleveland's moderating a panel. So if you're into sports, that's there.
Mississippi baseball, come on.
Haley Barber and Jim Barksdale on a panel about Katrina at 20, which I think is going to be a really big deal.
That's what I was forgetting, Russ. Katrina, the 20th anniversary of Katrina. Dr. Mark Keenum will be on that, who was Senator Thad Cochran's chief of staff at the time of Katrina. So, yes, that is going to be a really incredible panel.
Yeah, I'm excited about Angie Thomas. Now, I know she's not doing, but she said she was coming.
Oh, she is coming.
So I'm going to be there for that for sure.
That's the Middle Grade Dreams panel.
We're talking with the executive director of the Mississippi Book Festival, Ellen Daniels. We'll take a brief break right here on the Sit Down and come right back and do another segment about the book festival. We'll give you all the details, when you need to be there, what you need to bring, what you need to think about, and maybe a little bit of history behind the book festival, because I think it's really cool how this thing came together and the life that it's taken on. You're listening to Sit Down with Russ Latino. We will be right back.
At the Mississippi Arts and Entertainment Experience in Meridian, we believe in the power of the arts, storytelling, and education, just like Mississippi Public Broadcasting. MPB connects communities across the state with quality programs that inform, inspire, and engage. Their audience is loyal and appreciative of businesses that support public broadcasting, which makes underwriting on MPB a smart investment. Join us in supporting MPB. Learn more at mpbfoundation.org.
When the weather turns severe, when breaking news affects your family, when Mississippi needs answers, MPB is there. We provide real-time emergency alerts, trusted news coverage, and live broadcasts of emergency updates. Available on TV, radio, and online. MPB is on the air and by your side every day of the year. Because when it matters most, Mississippi turns to MPB. Mississippi's trusted source. MPB, your stories, our mission.
Everlasting, the Legacy Podcast, is the official companion podcast to the upcoming MPB original documentary, focusing on the life of Medgar Evers. The companion podcast, hosted by me, Rita Brent, will feature in-depth conversations, extended interviews, and exclusive archive footage not shown in the documentary. Everlasting, the Legacy Podcast, video and audio episodes premiere September 18th. Find it on mpbonline.org or wherever you get your podcasts. MPB, your stories, our mission.
You're listening to The Sit Down right here on MPB Think Radio. I'm your host, Russ Latino, today joined by my guest, the executive director of the Mississippi Book Festival, Ellen Daniels. I will say this, it is incredibly heartening to me to attend the book festival and see, and I mentioned this before the break, the volume of people, because I lament regularly what feels like a move societally away from deep learning and towards memes and Facebook Reels and Instagram and all that stuff that's fun. But I worry sometimes that we're going to lose out on the depth of nuance and really sort of critical thinking. And then you go to something like the book festival and you realize people from all over the state and truly all over the region and country are coming in because of their love of reading, because of their love of that kind of depth. And it's really exciting. And obviously, Mississippi's got a long history of literary giants, you know, from Percy to Welty to Faulkner, you name it, you know. Obviously, in more modern times, the John Grishams of the world and plenty of folks in between. People in Mississippi know how to spin a yarn. Part of the book festival is opening this year is honoring one of those people who really had become a literary giant in the modern era.
For sure. So this year at 9 a.m. on the South Capitol steps, we will honor the life and work of the late Greg Iles. You know, we lost Greg Iles a couple of weeks ago, and Greg was a literary giant in this state, and he still lived and worked in Natchez, Mississippi. And we just couldn't see carrying on with the day of celebrating Mississippi literature and our literary landscape without honoring him first. So we are, you know, proud to honor him. He's gone too soon, but yeah. Couldn't carry on the day without recognizing him.
Yeah, and I certainly touched a lot of people in Mississippi, and not actually having been from here brought a freshness to his perspective, but also was very good at capturing the essence of a lot of Mississippians.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, he really captured, especially in his later work, you know, the real Mississippi of what we were and like what we are becoming. As a state. So, yes, I mean, we're very proud of him. And, you know, and not everybody could go to Greg Iles' funeral. So, I mean, this is a way to be able to pay your respects to Greg.
So if you're listening and have never been to the Mississippi Book Festival, one, I recommend that you would go this Saturday from 9 till 5 p.m. You can come and go. It's very casual. It's kind of spread out around the Mississippi State Capitol, the old state Supreme Court, I think maybe First Baptist Church, a couple of other locations that are very, very walkable, close together. And it is a really cool experience. It's also going to be cooler. You and I were talking off air 2 years ago. Y'all used to do this in August, and I think you said it topped 105 degrees?
105 degrees in 2023. That was the highest temp of the day.
And I remember feeling like I was going to fall out. And you said there were people that actually fell out.
People fell out all day. And at the end of the day, you know, we have like our war room in the Capitol and Galloway Church. I mean, they just really let us have the run of the place for the week before the festival. I was in room 210 in the state Capitol, and I looked at the board president and I said, if you hadn't been paying me to be here today, I wouldn't have been here. I was like, this is insane. I'm tired of being bullied by college football. We got to move the date.
Yeah, and so going to be much nicer, much cooler outside, the kind of thing you can bring your family to, really enjoy, peruse, go to the panels you want to go to. Again, it's the kind of thing that you don't have to be there the whole day. People go in and out the whole, you know, throughout the day. And you go to msbookfestival.com to see the entire schedule. That's msbookfestival.com. I would just recommend doing it. I'm curious, Ellen, I know you've been involved with this for a long time. We said we're entering the 11th year of the book festival itself. How did this get started? Whose brainchild was this?
It's the brainchild of Jerry Nash. And if, you know, some people might not know who that is, but everyone that does know him, it's like, of course. So, but, you know, Russ, Mississippi has contributed more to Mississippi arts and letters than any other state combined. I mean, you know, and as far per capita, I mean, you know, we're not a super populated place. So, I mean, and as you touched on earlier, I mean, this is the state of literary giants that really have defined American literature. So why would we not have a book festival? So, you know, over 10 years ago, some like-minded, you know, some book advocates, enthusiasts got together and started dreaming this thing up. And, they were like, but who's going to run it? And I don't know who it was that said it. They were like, if you want an event to be a success, you need Holly Lang. And they reached out to Holly, and Holly just, she ran with it and made a really incredible event. And the first year that it happened, it was kind of on a leap of faith. They didn't know if people were going to come. John Grisham opened the festival up on the South Capitol steps, and about 2,000 people showed up. And then the next year, more people showed up. And then the next year, more people showed up. So in that first year, it was only in the state capitol. And the second year, they were like, this is bigger than we thought it was going to be. And so Galloway Church was brought in. Our largest festival venue is their sanctuary. It can seat up to 750 audience members. So, and we've been with them ever since. And last year, First Baptist Jackson was like, hey, we really want to host a panel in our sanctuary. And so we did that for the first time. We're doing it again this time. And just kind of more of what, with every year, there's more on offer. We have a ton of children's activities. People with young children, you're looking for something to do with them on the weekend. Last year was the first year we had a children's workshop room in Galloway Church, and it was packed for all 3 sessions. We're doing that again. There's lots of activities for children on the lawn. There's tons of food trucks. There's 20 booksellers this year. Lemuria Bookstore here in Jackson is our official bookseller for the day, but we have, publishers and local booksellers from all over the state and outside of the state set up on Mississippi Street selling books. And then 100 self-published authors in Authors Alley, which is one of the most beloved areas of the festival.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you were telling me, I guess, the rule is that it had to have been a book that was published in the last year. Is that right?
Yeah. So for authors who are on our official panels, of which we have 47 this year and 189 authors coming, it has to have been a book that was published within the calendar year, whether that be the hardback edition or the paperback edition. So that kind of helps narrow the pool down somewhat. Otherwise, you've got 5 million books to choose from. So we start out with a list at the beginning of the year with about 500 titles listed, and we just whittle it down.
So if somebody had never been before and they're listening and they're saying, this sounds interesting, it also sounds a little overwhelming. Just the volume that we're talking about, the volume of books that are going to be available, the volume of panels. What would you recommend to a first-time festival goer in terms of how to tackle the day?
Be very strategic. Go to our website, click on the date, and a drop-down menu will come up. We have our flip book, which is a digital version of the physical guide that will be there that day, and we have 6 time slots for panels. So, be very strategic. Pick out the ones that you really, really want to see. And there's more than likely there's going to be a panel that you want to see happening at the same time as another panel you want to see. Just pick one, and then you will be able to watch that session on our website a few weeks after the festival. So, sometimes, you're going to have to make a Sophie's choice, like pick your favorite child and just go with it. But also, all the sessions, and some people that can't make it, they live out of state and they can't get here this weekend, all of the sessions in the Galloway Sanctuary are live streamed to our homepage on the day of the festival. So you can watch those in real time.
And in terms of, somebody saying, all right, I'm going to go make a day of it. I'll be there from 9 to 5. Food offerings, drink offerings.
Tons of food trucks lining West Street, President Street, and then we have a grab and go on Congress Street. So if you are running from Galloway to the state capitol, you can stop at the grab and go, which is the food is being done by Howlin' Mouths, and grab something really quick and keep on going. You can do that.
So I am curious, how did you get involved? What was your start? Look, Jerry, it's not surprising at all to me that Jerry was the guy who came up with the idea. It's not surprising to me at all that Holly Lang was the dynamo that made it happen. Mm-hmm. What was your entry into this world?
So, Russ, I worked at Lemuria on and off for 13 years. I'm a bookseller at heart. That is what I truly love doing. I love connecting people with books that they're really going to love. And I worked at Lemuria. But at the time, when Holly reached out to me, I was actually working for a restaurateur. I was trying something different. And the health insurance didn't hurt. And she asked me for coffee. And when we met for coffee, she was like, do you want to work for the book festival? And I said, yes, I do. Because Russ, some people don't know this, I'm also a photographer, and I had taken the headshots for the book festival staff like earlier that year. And as I was doing it, I was like, why don't I work for the book festival? So I came on as the literary director in 2019. And I like to joke that I get paid to read, but really what I do is I read emails and work in spreadsheets. So literary director in 2019, 2020, of course, that festival was canceled. And in 2021, we got 10 days out from the festival and had to cancel it due to the proliferation of the Delta variant. So that was super fun, watching an entire year of work crumble in 16 hours. And then in September of 2021, I became the executive director.
So it's in your blood at this point for sure. I know you're busy. I know people don't realize what it takes to put something like this together. It is a year-long commitment to put something like this together, and you guys do an excellent job. I appreciate you coming in today and sharing a little glimpse of what the festival is about, what's going to be there. I would encourage everybody that's listening, one, go to msbookfestival.com, and you can get the lineup, and you can see everything that you could possibly ever want to see in terms of the panels that might be of interest to you, the authors that are going to be present there, all of that. And then, make a trip to Jacktown, make a trip to Jackson, down by the state capitol, and experience this, even if it's just for an hour or 2 hours. Part of the coolness of the experience will be seeing the number of people that are brought together. It really is a neat thing. And the weather's going to be glorious. So, Ellen, good luck on Saturday. I know lots of folks will be there and be rooting for you guys. And then you'll have that nice moment of breathing when it's over, right?
Yeah, and we have a fun party at Howland Mal's afterwards.
Also that.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming in. You're listening to The Sit Down with Russ Latino. We've been talking with the executive director of the Mississippi Book Festival, Ellen Daniels. We'll be back in just a moment. Switch gears a little bit, talk a little politics. Be back in just a moment.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bobby Rush. As a blues man, I love Mississippi Public Broadcasting. If you support Mississippi music and their local programming, donate now, right now, and become a member today, not tomorrow. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Doesn't matter how big or small, but we prefer big. Thank you very much.
The Measuring Show.
Since 1970, MPB has been enriching the lives of Mississippians.
Everything we do gives us the chance to grow and learn.
With your support, we are always there whenever and wherever you need us. Together through the years, together in the future. Please consider making a donation at mpbfoundation.org. MPB, your stories, our mission.
Every parent wants their child to grow, to explore, and to dream big. At MPB, we're proud to support families and teachers across Mississippi with trusted educational programming and resources that inspire learning and spark imagination. From PBS Kids favorites to digital tools and early learning support, MPB is here for young minds, engaged classrooms, and families who believe in the power of learning at every age. Empowering families, inspiring learners. MPB, your stories, our mission.
Sit Down right here on MPB Think Radio. I'm your host, Russ Latino. It was fun talking to Ellen Daniels. They've got obviously a big operation underway that she had to get back to today. Understandably, given the sheer volume of moving pieces involved in putting on something like the book festival, Germaine, it's really cool that you're doing that again.
I just love it, and I told the story last year because when I got chosen, I didn't ask to be on, a moderator or anything, but I've always was the kid that wanted to be the narrator. When the teacher would say, okay, we're going to read this play out of this book, I didn't want to be a part. I didn't want to be an actor. I wanted to be the narrator. And so it really touched me that somebody wanted me to moderate. And then the second story I told was I was an avid book reader as a child. I mean, I don't do it as much now, but it was to the point to where I would go to the libraries and I would steal books, Russ, and I wouldn't bring them back. And Mama would get mad because I would check them out, and then she would have late fees in her name. And so that's just how big I was on books.
If you're going to have a vice, taking books to read is not the worst one you could have. Like, it's a fairly cerebral sin.
I mean,
right?
I was tucking them in my shirt walking out. Like, it's just terrible. So, yeah.
It's funny you say that about reading. When I was practicing law, which I did for close to a decade, you read case law all day long, right? Or you read briefs all day long. And it kind of sucked the joy out of reading, like pleasure reading. And then at some level, that's been true in my past when I was dealing with public policy, right? You're reading research papers and white papers and data and statistics and all this stuff. And it's like at some level, your eyes start to bleed and you think the last thing I want to do is pick up a book. But for me, it comes in spurts. Mm-hmm. When I actually have time to breathe, reading is an intensely pleasurable thing. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
I think, oftentimes we get pretty occupied with other things that we're doing.
Yeah, and we do short form reading on social. And
it, it is changing at some level the way that people consume information. I think the book festival is a really cool thing. I think it is a really uniquely Mississippi thing given our history of storytelling. Mm-hmm. And it's a cool thing for us to champion and sort of herald from the top of the mountain or the top of the Capitol as it is. That this is something we're known for.
Yeah.
Especially in a sea of, oftentimes outside of Mississippi, bad press.
Yeah.
So that's a cool thing that they've started. I wish there was more like that, right? I mean, and I know there are music festivals and things like that. I kind of wish there was something that was the equivalent of the Mississippi Book Festival for music.
Well, the only one that I've got that for the state that's the equivalent, especially when people are looking outside in, is Cruising the Coast.
Yeah.
That's about the one that, nationwide everybody knows
and that is very cool as well.
We handle well, yeah.
Yes, especially if you grew up in a household with a dad that loved old cars.
Russ, are you talking about yourself?
Well, yeah. But I think that's true of a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
That I came up, in the 80s.
Yeah.
With a dad that was a product of the 50s, and he still loved 1950s and 1960s cars.
Yeah.
And so that was a bonding point, if you will, was around that and around Yankees baseball, which is crazy.
The two mix.
Yeah, well, that I'm like this Southern guy with a yokel accent who's a New York Yankees fan. It is what it is. You're a Buffalo Bills fan.
I know it down here. I know.
We all have those strange connections.
Right.
Have you been following any of this conversation with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. About sort of America's health crisis and making America healthy again and all of that?
Just bits and pieces that I've pulled off of social media that possibly he has said, but I haven't latched on.
Yeah.
But I have heard bits and pieces when it comes down to possibly vaccinations and his stance on a few things and things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because at some level, what triggered this thought is last week he appeared before the Senate Finance Committee. And got raked over the coals pretty good by Democratic senators. And at some level, you would look at that and say, well, of course, we live in a hyper-partisan world. The natural reaction would be for the opponent party to go after the guy who's representing the Trump administration in that hearing.
Yeah.
Robert F. Kennedy was a lifelong Democrat. In fact, ran for president.
Yeah, I knew
as a
that
Democrat.
story. Yeah.
And obviously came from a family that was Democratic royalty, Camelot, and John F. Kennedy and his father Robert F. Kennedy and his uncle Ted, and came from Democratic royalty. But it wasn't just Democratic senators that went after him. There were a couple Republican senators that went after him, including a couple physicians that were kind of the break point on him getting confirmed. His confirmation to the role of Secretary of HHS was kind of in doubt for a little while because of some of his views on other things in the past. One of those things, I think, being skepticism around vaccines.
Yeah.
But he kind of convinced, like Bill Cassidy from Louisiana, who's a Republican but a physician, that, hey, I'm not going to make it more difficult for people to have access to vaccines. And I think some of the criticism that came out last week was essentially that he kind of had walked back on that promise he'd made during confirmation.
Oh, okay.
There's an advisory panel at the CDC that is put together to make advice or give advice to physicians on vaccines. And he's largely dismantled that. He's ended some grant funding for new vaccine developments. I think close to $500 million in grant funding for new vaccine developments have been in it. And then recently they've promulgated some rules that will make it really hard to get access to the COVID vaccine. Only certain groups of people essentially will be eligible, and other people just won't have the opportunity to take it if they want to. And I think the part that I listened to and agreed with him on was that he's right that America has a chronic disease problem.
Right.
Right. I mean, the instances of diabetes, the instances of heart disease, dietary-related cancer, all of those things are well documented scientifically. They've increased dramatically over the last 4 to 5 decades. And because of that, it is now more abnormal. And I say this as an offender, right? I love food, obviously.
Yeah, don't you worry. Me too, Russ.
But because of that, it is now abnormal to be a healthy weight, right? Like 25% of our population is considered healthy by BMI terms.
Yeah.
It's a sliver
Yeah.
of the population. And so, when I hear him talk about that side of things, I'm like, it makes a lot of sense to me that this is a real epidemic or problem with chronic disease that I think is largely tied to diet and lifestyle. We eat way too many ultra-processed foods. Those ultra-processed foods are very high in sugar, very high in complex carbohydrates. The end result of that is an insulin problem. The end result of that insulin problem is weight gain.
Yeah.
And so there's good science behind all of that. Eat too much ultra-processed stuff, don't move around enough, and the consequence of that is that we're hurting ourselves because most of these chronic diseases are related to obesity. So you look at all that and you're like, okay, that makes sense. But has he identified the actual root cause of that? And are the prescriptions that he's pushing actually related to the root cause of that, right? And so I think where it feels like a leap to me is that he seems to be conflating vaccine access with chronic disease. And there's just not a lot of scientific evidence to suggest that those two things
ties the two
are related, right? And I think for physicians in particular who have been taught that, hey, these vaccines are really important to a healthy population, it feels like somebody saying the earth is flat.
Yeah.
Because if you look at our history, I would argue that one of the greatest inventions in human history is the invention of a vaccine. We eradicated polio. We eradicated smallpox. We largely had eradicated measles, mumps, and rubella. We're starting to see pockets of that come back in unvaccinated communities in the United States. But all of those things are either deadly or debilitating in the right circumstances, and they're over. Nobody in our generation knows someone who had polio. Maybe our grandparents might, or maybe our father or mother might if they're older.
Right.
But nobody in our generation knows anyone who had polio. And, that's because of the development of a vaccine. And so one of the problems I think sometimes is like it's really easy to say, well, what have vaccines actually done for us? Because we don't have to see the consequence of not having them.
Yeah, the question that I have is, are they looking at the cost of them? It's always, it feels like to me, it's going back to the dollar somehow. Is the dollar involved in the vaccine idea of cutting it?
I don't think So I think that people who are skeptical of vaccines would say that the reason that they've been pushed on us is for the financial gain of the developers of the vaccines. And certainly,
I mean, you could kind of argue a little bit about that, but
sure.
yeah.
And certainly the pharmaceutical industry makes money off of vaccines. The margins on those are much, much smaller than the margins on other drugs. And part of that is the scale of what you're doing, right? Because you're vaccinating essentially a whole population or most of a population. So certainly there's money involved. And when there's money involved, there's the potential for corruption.
Correct.
Science, I've been in the government affairs game long enough to know that science and medicine aren't any more pure than any other industry that goes to the government for protection or contracts or whatever. So I get the skepticism. By the same token, I don't think the entire scientific and medical community is lying to us.
Right.
I don't think the entire community is acting in a nefarious way. And I think there are a lot of people who, for good intentions, saw their child get sick after the vaccine and maybe in their mind connected those two things. And in some cases, there are adverse effects. I mean, Tylenol has adverse effects, right?
Yeah.
There's a percentage of the population that genetically aren't meant for that specific medicine.
Right.
So there are adverse effects. But I think what you saw, in the 90s was really plaintiffs' attorneys that were looking for like the next big tobacco type lawsuit start pushing this idea that the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, which has been around in some form since the 1960s, caused autism. And they hired a guy who's a physician in Britain named Andrew Wakefield to essentially come up with a study that linked MMR vaccine to autism. The study involved 12 kids, 8 of whom had autism. So not a large-scale study that typically you'd want to see in a scientific setting. And then it turned out that he falsified the data on the 8 kids. So the paper that he wrote got published in a serious medical journal called The Lancet and was out there for a year. And then it came out that the data had been falsified. Yeah. His co-authors withdrew their name. The Lancet withdrew the article, and then Dr. Wakefield lost his medical license. But in the process of all of that unfolding,
the damage had been done.
The damage had been done because it had been created in people's minds that, hey, if my child's been diagnosed with autism, it was because of the vaccine. Yeah. In reality, simultaneously in the 90s, they were changing classifications for autism, and it became much more identifiable, right? Wow. There were a lot more diagnoses that didn't necessarily mean an uptick in the actual incidence of what we now classify as autism. And then there's the whole idea that there are a million other environmental factors that could factor into whether or not a child develops autism. Yeah. And so all of that to be said, that there was already some skepticism built up from parents who legitimately wanted to understand why their kid had developed autism. And then I think COVID just blew the doors wide open.
Then we were all at the house skepticizing, if that's a word.
Sure. And I mean, look, the truth is the scientific community undermined themselves in a lot of ways during COVID, not because they were trying to be insidious, I don't think. I think they spoke with a level of certainty about something that they were uncertain about.
Correct.
They were trying to create confidence in the public that they knew what they were talking about.
And we were all learning in the moment.
And everybody was learning in the moment. And so you had a situation with COVID where, we were told we had to keep 6 feet apart from each other. And, now Fauci comes out and says, actually, we just kind of made that number up, right?
Yeah.
We don't know if it's 6 feet or 15 feet or whatever. Right. Same thing with the mask. At some level, same thing with the COVID vaccine in terms of the efficacy of it, right? So I think early on, there was some conversation about it like ending transmission and reducing hospitalizations to nothing. There's some evidence of mitigation, but it wasn't as efficacious as what we were told it was going to be.
Yeah.
This is anecdotal, but I got the jab, twice.
I think I did 4.
Having never had COVID, and then 3 weeks later got COVID.
Right.
So anyway, I say all of that to say that I think the COVID period made people very distrustful of the acuity with which scientists speak.
Yeah, I agree.
And so it opens the door to some of this conversation. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the states because already Florida has said we're going to pull our mandate for children attending schools. They get to decide whether or not they're going to take vaccines. There's a part of that resonates with me. I think people should be able to decide what goes in their bodies or doesn't go in their bodies.
Yeah.
By the same token, the consequence of that is going to be, the spread of more disease.
Yeah.
And I think Mississippi is going to grapple with that. There is a large movement in Mississippi of folks that are very skeptical of vaccines. This was even before COVID. And I think there's probably going to be some pressure on the legislature to see if they want to follow suit with what Florida's trying to do. I've already seen Dr. Dan Edney, who runs the health department, come out and basically say this is a really bad idea. Like, we have high uptake in Mississippi in vaccines, which is why we don't have these diseases. It'll be really interesting to watch this fight unfold, particularly because it has become so polarizing and partisan, right?
Yeah.
Like, it now is like it's Democrat to be in favor of vaccines and it's Republican to be against it almost.
Yeah.
Or at least a certain segment of both of those parties. And it's like, this shouldn't really be a partisan issue. Like, the science is either there or not.
Yeah.
And if Robert F. Kennedy believes the science isn't there, or that studies have been hidden, or data's been hidden, he's in a unique position now to actually do the work of disproving
that
the thing that he's saying is wrong, right? And so, like, I had a friend say, well, we used to think that the sun revolved around the earth. You know, science is wrong. Scientists are often wrong.
Yeah.
But you know how we got to the point that we realized the earth revolved around the sun? Science actually went through the steps of disproving
that
the other way around.
Yeah.
And so I think we've got to be careful about just latching on to speculation about the causes of our problems. Russ's view is that the cause of our health problems is largely dietary and is largely a byproduct of the fact that there's abundance in this country where high-calorie foods are readily available at our fingertips at pretty low cost.
Yeah.
And the consequences of that are long-term health problems.
Also, here in Mississippi, you had grandparents who cooked a mighty good few meals and made you eat them. So that's how you got to the size you were here.
Sure. No, there's part of that.
It's a Mississippi thing.
There's part of that. But, like, I'm sure you're this way. So my grandparents, and when I was a kid, I was lucky enough because everybody in my family had kids early to have great grandparents. They did not eat what I would consider healthy, right? I mean, my great-grandmother used lard in everything she cooked.
Yeah.
There was ham hock and greens, all that kind of stuff.
Heavy butter.
But it wasn't ultra-processed. It was like natural food.
Yeah.
And the portions were just so dramatically different, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think that's part of my own personal conversation is like, okay, you could eat that.
Yeah.
You just need to eat a lot less
of it
than what you're already eating. Anyway, I think it's a fascinating conversation, in part because of the amount of cost involved in our healthcare system. I mean, America's healthcare system is the most expensive healthcare system in the world. At some level, that's because our scientists are actually really good.
Yeah.
Because we're doing all this negative stuff to hurt our bodies, and they're having to come up with ways to fix it.
Yeah.
On the other end, and that's expensive, right? But at some level, the problems that we've got in terms of cost are a byproduct of really good innovation that's meant to counterbalance all of the self-harm that we're doing.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's interesting. I'll mention one other thing as we close out the program here. I realize I just skipped an entire commercial break, by the way.
No, you're fine, Russ. That's what we do here in radio.
I get to go in. It was interesting.
That was good stuff, and I wanted to know.
So I'll mention one other thing. It's like, obviously, the U.S. Senate race in Mississippi has kicked off in earnest.
Okay.
You've got U.S. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, who's very much aligned herself with President Trump, has President Trump's endorsement. That matters in Mississippi. Obviously, the president is popular in a lot of places. He's unpopular in a lot of places. Mississippi is one of the places that he's most popular to this day. And so having that endorsement will matter an awful lot.
Yeah.
Having the incumbency will matter an awful lot. District Attorney Scott Cullum is running against her. I've met Scott. I've spent time talking with Scott. Bright guy, running as a Democrat, obviously. Democrats have had a hard time in Mississippi for the last 15, 20 years, particularly when you're talking about statewide elections. So that's a big hill to crest. I think the narrative that will develop and that will stick, and this won't be good for D.A. Cullum, is a narrative of President Trump versus George Soros. And that stems from when District Attorney Cullum beat Forrest Allgood up in Columbus to become district attorney. There was a PAC that George Soros was the only funder to, and that PAC spent $716,000, according to their Secretary of State records, in support of his candidacy for district attorney. If you're in Mississippi politics, one, you know that George Soros is sort of a boogeyman, particularly for conservatives and Republicans. And so the attachment or association with that name is going to be a really hard sort of millstone to overcome. The other thing you know is that elections are relatively cheap in Mississippi. So $716,000 back in 2015 would have been enough to get somebody elected statewide. There are plenty of statewide elections, even in more recent time, that have occurred for less than that amount of money. So that level of spending and who spent it in a single judicial district is, I believe, going to be a primary attack point. And then you essentially get into a proxy situation where you've got, President Trump versus George Soros. I think 99 times out of 100, President Trump wins that proxy battle in Mississippi. I will say this, though. I think there's going to be a lot of money spent by both sides. I think national Democrats are interested in this race. You heard James Carville talking about this race. Chuck Schumer, who's the Senate Minority Leader, has talked about this race. So there will be a lot of money spent. There'll be a lot of messaging done. There'll be a lot of fun food fights in store over the next year. We started having elections further and further out. It's like political sport, right? So we're talking about this in 2025,
yes,
the elections in November of 2026. Yeah. But the race is sort of solidifying itself. I think the risk that national Democrats are making, in my estimation, is looking at the performance of Brandon Presley in 2023 and thinking that is transferable to the Democratic Party or any Democrat. I think Brandon Presley was a unique sort of unicorn personality, sort of an old school yellow dog Democrat that still resonated in parts of rural Mississippi. It will be harder for that to be true with other Democrats, whether it be Collin or anybody else. I just don't think that his popularity is necessarily transferable. But we'll watch and see how that race unfolds. Yeah. There's already, like I said, there's already been some ugly food fighting over a phone call that was like a fake phone call to the senator, and then the Republican Party got upset and sends a letter to the DOJ saying that they impersonated the senator's voice.
This is getting there.
Yeah, it's early.
Yeah.
It could be very ugly with a result that I think is almost certain.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
Listen, been a good show.
It has,
Great
Russ.
visiting with you. Great visiting with Ellen. If you're in the Jackson area on Saturday, go to the Mississippi Book Festival, 9 to 5 p.m., msbookfestival.com. It has been great being with you today. The Sit Down is a production of Mississippi Public Broadcasting. Think Radio, made possible thanks to the generous support of listeners like you. If you enjoy the guest, Sit Down visits we bring each week, please consider contributing to help keep shows like this on air. Visit MPB online to show your support using the MPB Public Media app. Today's show was produced by Germaine Flood with live stream production by Abram Nanny. And maybe Kevin Farrell. I think I saw Kevin back there.
He's back there.
For my guest, Ellen Daniels, I'm Russ Latino. Stay tuned for Southern Remedy right here at 11 a.m. And join us next week for an episode of The Sit Down, heard only on MPB Think Radio.